And we're live. Thank you, everyone, for joining this week's edition of our community call. We're going to go, as usual, through a brief update of the most recent changes that we've seen happening recently. And then we're going to open the microphone for comments and questions from the floor. So let's go quickly through the updates. There have been a few fixes in master. Things around, there's this bug that some of you may have noticed around the Jitsi display name not being properly shown and people seeing hello Jitster. This is now removed in the fixed in master, but also, but it hasn't been deployed yet. So that is something impacting both mobile and web, and the fix should fix for both, basically. There should be a release on me Jitsi happening later today or tomorrow, and that's one of the issues that it addresses. On mobile land, there's a new nav bar that people should start seeing, and that currently shows the conference name. If the meeting was started from a calendar meeting, it contains that calendar name as well. As part of our future changes, we're going to make sure that this name is distributed through the backend so that it becomes available to everyone. For the XMPP aficionados, guess I'm not specifically thinking about you, although I am. This is going to use the XMPP multi-topic, and then people can do all sorts of backend things to use that name for history lists and things like that. We certainly are planning on doing that. Zoli, would you like to add anything else around mobile, or does that summarize it?
There's just a few more notes. One is that we've been working on the connection service API on Android. So that will be also in the next release, which is my next note. We currently don't have releases into stores. You can find every update in master, but we don't have a store release yet. We plan to have it probably this week, but timing may change.
Thank you for that. Moving to other components, Damien has been working recently on a number of very significant fixes with Jigassi. So again, make sure that you update your Jigassis. He's currently joining through Jigassi as well. So we're seeing much better performance. Also, on a slightly different note, we have the company that provides us with the PSN connection service for this call, Vox Implant. I wanted to give them some kudos because they've recently added support for RFC 6464, audio levels for every audio packet, which means that Jigassi is not going to forward streams that contain silent audio packets, and that really greatly simplifies the load on the service. So it's just an interesting. It's just an interesting. It's a good win from the various design choices that we've made, and again, kudos to the Vox Implant folks. So we also recently identified a split brain problem with Octo. Boris, would you like to talk about this, or should I just go and summarize it?
Go ahead. I don't have anything to add.
No, actually, yeah. Why don't you go?
It's a pure bug on our side where if a conference goes to using 2 bridges and then goes to using 1 bridge and then stays in this state for a few minutes, some of the channels time out and then the communication between the bridges is broken. We have a fix for it in master already, but it hasn't been deployed to Jitsi, so you might still experience the bug. And if that happens, just choose a new conference name.
And a good way to recognize it is if you have islands of people communicating to each other, and that sort of seem to match geographic location, then yes, that's the bug experiencing. This should be, Boris, correct me if I'm wrong, but this should be one of the things that are fixed with the release we're planning.
Yep.
Probably even the most important one. There was, by the way, another issue that we're recently looking at with regard to TCP streams connected to the bridge and ICE performance or lack thereof. And that's something that we were being severely impacted by in the past couple of weeks. Boris, would you like to talk about this one too? Because I don't think we've discussed it on the call.
Sure. First, I want to say thanks to Yuri. I don't know if he's on the call, but he's been working on ICE4J in the last few months, and he has some significant improvements in the number of threads there. We hadn't updated for a while, so when we did, we discovered that some of these changes that reduce the number of threads cause problems when we're using ICE TCP. Problems meaning all of the available threads in the pool get stuck right into a TCP socket, which results in ICE failing for everyone else on the bridge. Because of this, we've reverted the ICE4J version and Video Bridge, and we are working together with Yuri on getting those fixed. So we expect to get them fixed soon, probably this week, and then we can use the new ICE4J version in the bridge.
That sounds good. And Boris and Brian, are you folks, do you think it makes sense to talk about the DTLS stuff? Or just put on that for the next call when we have a little bit more info?
I don't know if the info will change. I have some work that allows support for DTLS 1.2 in the new bridge. I don't think it would be terrible to backport this to master, but the new bridge is just where I happen to do this. Anyone who is security minded, I'd love a review because that would be great from the security perspective, not necessarily a coding perspective, but from the DTLS perspective. But that's the only update. I don't have any update as to when this will make it into master, but certainly some point, hopefully well before Chrome 74, it's stable, as that's when they're deprecating support for 1.0.
Thanks, Brian. And by the way, I'm realizing we haven't done that in quite a long time. Would you like to give an update on how the new bridge implementation is going and what the timings are that we're currently planning?
Sure. We're still hoping for a merge to master at the end of March. I think a lot of the majority of the feature work is done. Boris is going to be working on some small things and then bringing Octo back on the new bridge. That's one of the notable things that's missing. And some of George's most fixes have not been ported yet. I'm in a mode of going back and doing some kind of memory analysis and general performance analysis and taking care of some of the kind of scaffolding code that was in there to get things to work, but is perhaps not the most performant. So I'm kind of in that mode now and hope to be able to remain in that mode basically from here out to keep us on track to get things merged by the end of March.
Thank you very much. Also, Christo recently completed integration with Amplitude, I believe. I don't know if that's in master already.
So the web version should be in master. The mobile is still in a review, but I expect it to be there very, very soon because it appears that all the work is done. It just needs approval. Maybe we'll need to rebase, but very, very soon it should be in master.
And thank you, Christo. One other exciting thing that you are going to, you're planning on working on soon is this entire spike on improving device management. We know that there are a number of issues there around remembering which device was last chosen, switching to new devices, and there's this bug specifically around you appear to be using one device, but you're actually using another, and then you have to go and deselect it and reselect it in order for this to actually happen. So, or plugging in new devices and we don't actually show them to you immediately or things like that. So there's a good chunk of work that's going to happen soon. As part of this chunk, we're also going to make it possible for API users to set devices from the outside. This is specifically useful when you're planning on using, when you're planning an integration of the Jitsi Meet API in an app that has its own device management, central device management. So that would be a good place. Or you have an integration in an app that doesn't necessarily have other audio calls, but really just think that audio video device selection should happen in your global preferences, then this would also allow you to do that. There has been also significant progress on Spot. Nothing, we're not yet at the point where we would be encouraging the community to test it already, but it's progressing very nicely. So everyone get ready for it. Get ready, get your communities ready. You'd soon have native room support with Jitsi, whether you're using Jitsi or whether you're having your own deployments. You'd be able to support rooms with their own calendars and such. That's all I had for the team. Does anyone from the team want to add stuff that I've undoubtedly forgotten? Okay, then let's open for any comments, questions, and queries from the floor. And I'm not sure what the difference is between questions and queries. So let's just limit it to comments and questions.
This is Mark. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
So
I have a question. Yeah. This is Josh.
Go ahead, George.
We're seeing a lot of errors where it's unpredictable for Mac on where it says the microphone is not available. Are any of those?
Josh, I'm completely unable to understand what you're saying. It sounds like a microphone thing. Maybe you can try with another device if you have one available. Mark, in the meantime, why don't you go and ask your question?
Okay. All right. Thank you. Just a couple of quick ones. Did you say you use Vox implant for the dial-in that's in this like what was included in this room? That's what you use as a SIP?
Yes. Well, to be very clear, we use Gigassi. That's the piece that you need. That's one of the GT projects. That's the piece that you need in order to get something to understand the GT signaling and talk to PSTN. But yes, the PSTN provider for me, Jitsi, is Vox implant. And specifically, one of the interesting things there is that you have support for SSRC mixing. So you don't need Gigassi to actually go and do the audio mixing. You can just send all the streams to back to your SIP provider that way.
Right. When people dial in like through a landline into a Jitsi Meet, you're actually paying per minute for them to be able to do that, correct, with Vox pricing?
That's correct.
Okay. And my last question is, I have some questions that I don't need to necessarily ask in this call, but I wanted to see if I could reach out to someone that's kind of the guru on the mobile side. I have some things we're trying to work on, and before we go down a certain path, I wanted to just vet some things to make sure we're not wasting our time on a few items.
this is actually the right place to do that.
Okay.
Either this or the community forums.
Well, then I'll pose it real quick. I mean, we already have a WebRTC solution for one-to-many type things, and we've integrated the Google Translate into it, so it allows people, say in Germany, that wanted to watch a webinar to be able to select German, type in German. The people it'd be in another language, say the United States, would get it in English. So everybody thinks everybody else is typing in their languages. It has translation. We wanted to be able to do that with the Jitsi app, and we can easily do it with the browser-based version. But I wanted to find out if anyone's ever tried to do that with the mobile app using the Google Translate API that would be plugged into the mobile side for translation, like in the text or the chat box.
There's actually already support for this in Meet and in Jitsi, and it also is supported on the mobile apps. Boris, would you like to describe how Jitsi does its part, or maybe Zoli about the mobile part?
I think it's better for Boris because I can only tell about how it gets rendered. So.
Well, actually, let's you maybe just talk about how we get it from Jitsi and render it in mobile.
We currently have it in the Redux state that comes as signaling from Jitsi, and then we have a component that is called there is actually a feature called transcription, which you can check out. The entire code is boxed there. Nowhere else. It's not that long, so it's easy. Then we basically put a caption component on the conference. Basically, that's it.
So the translation is a different component than the closed captioning, correct? And it allows people to type in other languages, and then people that have selected separate languages would see it appear in that language.
Oh, were you talking about the chat only?
Yeah.
Well,
we don't support the typing part. We only do that for text to speech and then back.
Right, and yeah, to answer your question, we would want to translate, of course, the closed captioning, but we would also want to be able to have someone to type in their native language, and then it get translated into whatever language other people select. That technology exists, but I didn't know how to integrate that into the mobile app, and I didn't know if anyone had ever done that.
So the easiest way for you to do that would be, I assume you have your own deployment. The absolute easiest way for you to do that would be to do it as a Prosody module. Prosody is the XMPP server that we use, and you can very easily add the module that does that handles the translations. Obviously, you can also do it on the client side, but I mean.
And what was the name of the module you just mentioned? Say that word again.
The XMPP server that we use is called Prosody. You know, as in the poetic thing, and it's written in Lua, and it has a very lightweight, very easy to use module mechanism. So you can just easily add new modules and have access to the messages that are being exchanged in chat. If you're only interested in chat, I would start there, because you don't need to worry about any specifics around mobile and browser. Yeah, basically.
Well, I'd also want to be able to convert the closed captioning as well.
So for that part, we don't have a full implementation yet. We started work on it during Google Summer of Code last year. We have the transcription part, which takes the text, the audio, passes it through Google's voice-to-text API, and does the closed captions. We were also planning to have a module which does translation, but we haven't finished with that. So that's another way to go, and potentially could also do the chat this way. But obviously there's multiple ways to do the chat.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for chiming in, Mark. Other questions?
Hi, this is Lewis. I had
Hi, Lewis.
I had two questions. One I think may actually be resolved with the fix you mentioned earlier, where somebody calls in via Jitsi dial-in bridge, and the display name isn't always set to the user's phone number. Sometimes it's empty, and sometimes it has the phone number and it's non-deterministic.
Yeah, that sounds like the fix that I mentioned.
Okay, great. So I'm going to try, and that's a libjitsi meet fix.
Correct. Yes.
Perfect. And then the second question was Jitsi related as well, or maybe it's Jitsi plus Jikofo, where if the first person to join a room is calling via a cell phone or a landline, they hear the phone rings indefinitely, so that they're not connected to the room because there's nobody in the room. But if somebody's already in the room, they're connected right away. Is that an issue with Jitsi, or is it a configuration setting?
That's actually
Yeah, this is
okay. So
how it's, yeah.
this is by design.
By design?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Out of curiosity, what's the rationale?
So the problem is that I'm trying to remember. It was something to do with, we wanted to make sure that we auto expire Jitsi sessions, SIP sessions, people that hung up on the PSTN side, and we want to make sure that they don't linger behind.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank. Does anyone remember why we did it that way? There was a good reason, I remember that, but can't remember it offhand.
Okay, so there's no way around it. That's fine. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't doing something.
No, I wouldn't say that there's no way. There probably is a way around it. I think it might have been related to a risk we weren't willing to take. I might be imagining stuff now, but I think it was we didn't want to risk sessions running empty behind. Or it's people like, I don't remember. Does no one remember why like how we landed here?
Can it be something with the default room? So if the room is out to discover it somehow, that basically if there is nobody in the room, that the guy that is calling in will not be paying money because nobody answers him.
I don't remember. But what would be a good way to change that and to get them to land immediately, Damien?
Yeah, I need to look. I'm not sure about that.
I actually don't even remember where the waiting is happening. Is it Jitsi that doesn't connect the call?
Yeah,
So-
it's Jitsi. Nobody.
So
yeah.
I did kind of. I think Jitsi doesn't send 200 back, right? And in this case, there's no other member in the meeting room. So Jitsi doesn't allocate channel on JRB. So Jitsi didn't receive a session initiated for the XMPP collect.
Oh, right. Okay. Right.
So basically code just hand there and invite just Jitsi doesn't send 200 back, then just.
Yeah. So right, here's the way that Jikofo works is that it doesn't do anything ever when there's only one participant in the room.
Yes. Yes.
Even from browser, it just, you would sit there, and in order for Jikofo to connect anything to anyone, there needs to be at least two people that are talking to each other. So my recommendation for addressing this would be to see if maybe an easy way to address it. I'm kind of shooting from the hip here, so I not necessarily have the details of how this would work, but maybe you could park the call on your server, get some music on hold there, and then track the 200 OK back from Jitsi, and when it arrives, you switch the user to off a call, basically.
Well, will Jigasi give it? Will Jigasi? It's not like an open-ended connection with Jigasi, right? I'd have to continually make the request, or I think like a more feasible.
No. You're basically waiting for Jigasi to send back a 200 OK. So you could connect your user and on the PSTN or on your SIP line, you could connect your user and send them early media or something like that. And then once you get the 200 back OK from Jigasi, you're good and you can connect them directly.
Yeah, I think it is one way. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Because
thank you.
changing. Sorry, what did you say?
Well, I just said thank you. I think an alternative too would be to just track the number just to query the number of participants in the room, and before you even try to call Jigasi, and do the SIP work if you could do that.
Yeah, you could probably do that. You would need an extra plugin probably that would give you the number of participants. But here's the problem with this. If you have two Jigasis trying to join, neither of them would actually join the MOOC. And so you would need to make sure that you take that case into account too.
Yep. Thank you.
Or not. Maybe I'm not. You should try it. It's been a while since we last did this. Yeah. Hope it helps. Anyone else?
And I have two questions. This from Kaido and from Comcast. Okay. And first thing you mentioned about DTLS 1.2. Is already landed in the master?
For the new bridge is, I believe, what Brian mentioned.
Yeah, it's not even in the branch of the new bridge. There's just a.
So I think it changes in the libgt's code. Libgt's code, right?
Yeah, the new bridge doesn't use the libjitsi repo anymore. That's one of the things that's replaced, but that's where the code is on current master. Yeah.
So in libgt's, right?
Correct.
Right.
That's where it is.
Oh, okay.
But
okay, thank you.
But just to be clear, the PR that's open right now that has details 1.2 code is not on libjitsi. It's on one of the new repos, Jitsi Media Transform. If you want to look at it.
GT Transform.
Yeah, Jitsi Media Transform. There's a PR there for it.
Okay. And another question also related to the Chrome. So I know you guys are working on a unified plan. Can you give us some kind of estimation when you'll be ready?
Well, before Plan B gets deprecated. Not really. It's one of the things that we should start tackling within the next couple of months.
Okay.
But we're not really rushing it, given that I was checking the other day. Even Google Meet seems to still be using Plan B, yeah, we're not really in a rush right now. But yes, it's on our plate.
Oh, do you have any idea when Chrome will remove the Plan B support? I know
they have mentioned in previous calls that they would keep it going for at least the end of 2019.
Okay, that's good news.
Yeah. So it's not. It's you would be hearing us more worried if that weren't the case.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is very good news. Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome, Edwin. Say hi to Chris. Any other questions?
Hi, this is Paul. How's it going?
Hi, Paul. Great. How are you?
Good. Happy Monday. So we've made a lot more progress on our. Yeah. Well, we make the best of it. We made a lot more progress on getting our recorder RTP info working in JVB with some of the changes we've talked about. So a couple quick questions that things we've run into. So one, is there a way, like a consistent, repeatable way of adjusting the quality of Opus? So I looked at the Opus RTP spec, and I know there's bandwidth settings that we can set, on the SDP. But
are you only interested through SDP, or are you interested through the codec manipulation itself?
whatever is whatever effectively sets it.
Are you trying to get
higher.
this to run from Chrome or from a private
Chrome.
build thing that you have? Oh, okay.
Right now, just Chrome. Yeah. So it's not even clear whether Chrome will actually obey the bandwidth settings or any of these other settings. But and then also I was curious whether within the I forget, like the source one of the jingle packet source packet info extension, whether the bandwidth settings there is something that we should be leveraging to set the bandwidth. Because my understanding is that would even be dynamic. So I was curious on that. Or do people just kind of go with whatever the default is?
I think the silence that you're hearing, and please, if anyone wants to say something, please just interrupt me. But so far, what we found is that this is very obscure. We've needed to set parameters on Opus. Some of them used to be working. So specifically with FEC, we wanted FEC to always be enabled. And we have this parameter in there, but it seems that at one point Chrome just started ignoring that, and they started applying some more complex logic about when FEC is on or off. I don't specifically know about bandwidth. I'd say that it could be either way. But we don't really know. We've needed that in the past, and our most recent attempts to do things have been always like, nah, this doesn't really seem like it's being taken into account anymore.
Okay. So just
and
kind
we
of
don't really know.
Okay. Has anybody had any luck with other codecs like Speaks, where, given that they're maybe a little older, they're better supported? Or
Speaks?
Or
does Chrome even have that?
Maybe not. Or is there a different codec that might give us good quality that Chrome might support? Or is it really just, I guess it's just Opus at this point? Or...
I've only seen it on video, by the way. I don't believe I've ever seen it for audio. So yeah.
Okay, just curious. So so my other question is, I actually perchance came across, I guess, Boris's old that old thesis from 5 years back that talks about the recorder RTP impl, which is really, really helpful, really useful document, just in better understanding the strategy there. Because there were a few things that I wasn't fully clear on, like exactly what the rationale for the silence effect was, or the packet buffer. So one thing that I think we were we basically narrowed down most of our problems to be related to the jitter buffer and having an adequately sized jitter buffer. But according to the thesis, the point of the packet buffer, which was implemented solely for video, really, and that was a non-resizing buffer and implemented also as a transform engine in the recorder RTP impl. According to that document, it says that the packet buffer basically makes the jitter buffer kind of useless. Like the packet buffer is basically it is effectively the jitter buffer and is significantly large enough to be able to handle and address some of the issues that we were running into. Yeah, I guess the question is, like, from our experiments, we couldn't really replicate that type of behavior. So if we can increase our jitter buffer, and that was helping, but we couldn't getting them both to work together. So the packet buffer, if we increase that to be significantly large, the jitter buffer being smaller coming before it would cause problems. So I was wondering, is there something that we're missing? Because it doesn't seem that there's a way to basically effectively disable the jitter buffer and increase the packet buffer and have the packet buffer basically be the main buffer for RTP packets, just because the real jitter buffer gets in the way. Does that make sense?
Yes. I'm sort of speaking from memory because I haven't seen that part of the code in a long time. I believe the packet buffer that we have comes before FMJ's jitter buffer. And since if you have the packet buffer big enough, it's gonna fix any misordered or jittered packets. This should cause FMJ's buffer to stay small because it's adaptive and it grows when it sees delays and loss. There are some properties that you can use to set the behavior of the jitter buffer.
Okay.
I can look them up if you want. I think there's one to actually disable the adaptiveness and set a fixed size.
Okay.
Yeah, here's Ben. I'm just gonna add some more. So yeah, what we've seen is that if the jitter buffer cannot grow enough, then it still drops frames. So even though the packet buffer can be very large, if the jitter buffer is a little bit smaller, and let's say transcoding or recording takes some time, then the jitter buffer still will drop frames, obviously, because it is sort of the last step in that flow. And yeah, so we were wondering, I guess, whether originally, let's say in the thesis or in your when you worked on this, did you still have a jitter buffer, or did you have a way around that and just not have a jitter buffer at all? At least, I mean, I'm talking about the RTPC source, the RTP source stream jitter buffer that comes right before the processor.
We always had both the packet buffer and the jitter buffer in FMJ.
But Ben, that specific problem that you're mentioning, wouldn't that be solved by Boris's suggestion to just make them both big and disable the adaptiveness of the jitter buffer?
Yeah, that's true. So if you raise the max on the jitter buffer, or make them just really even without adaptiveness, make them really large, yes, then that would solve that. The only thing I remember that the thesis mentions this problem, then that you still have to, for your last, whatever, 10 seconds or so, you would have to sort of empty the jitter buffer, make sure that you're still reading all that's been buffered in there. Where I don't know, maybe I read this wrong, but in the thesis, it occurred to me, it seemed to me that that's something that you're describing getting around by having the packet buffer large, I guess. Or in other words, if the jitter buffer is so large, then why even make the packet buffer large?
First, the packet buffer's purpose was for video, where we're not decoding, so we don't have a jitter buffer elsewhere. I don't remember the settings for audio.
Okay, but just so you're saying you still had a jitter buffer, and you would recommend making it just large for this problem?
Yes, I would recommend that you use FMJ's actual jitter buffer and making that large. Do you have the properties for this already?
Yeah, we know. Yeah, we know the properties. Yeah.
As for the packet buffer for audio, I can't think of a reason to have it. I might be missing something, but I think it was just an artifact. I think it was meant for video only.
Well, one problem one side effect that was mentioned of using the jitter buffer instead of the packet buffer is that if you have a really high jitter buffer, especially for the purposes of recording, we run into this issue where we lose the last, however many seconds of the buffer of the audio, right? Because with packet buffer, there are methods to flush it and get the remaining packets of the buffer whenever a stream leaves or shut down. But with the regular jitter buffer, we can't really find an easy way of getting at those packets, which is why we try to,
that's a valid point. Can you generate a bunch of fake audio packets and feed them?
So one thing we've been thinking about is just letting the processor run longer, for example, so that it empties that jitter buffer, for example. That was one idea. The other one was, I think that was the main idea, something like that.
Yeah, unless there's a better way of extending the jitter buffer in FMJ to get the remaining packets out in the same way that the packet buffer works. Or I guess disabling the jitter buffer entirely and only using the packet buffer. But yeah, there doesn't seem to be an easy way of doing both. And I guess, yeah, I do know that packet buffer was for video only. Maybe that's part of the reason. Yeah, but we do, I think, predominantly because of the overhead of decoding, like that, doing the Opus decoding does definitely increase. It does create significant overhead. So the only other thing we could think of is actually moving the Opus decoding out of sort of a real-time flow and just doing that processing, that decoding asynchronously, which I assume would sort of minimize the need for as large of a jitter buffer. But yeah.
When would you do the decoding then?
Well, we would do that as a later step offline. So we would just save Opus data, and then we would decode it whenever we need it.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you can, if that works for you, and you can save everything in an Opus OGG file, that would be even better. The only reason we didn't do it is lack of time.
Okay. So you would recommend that because, yeah, I think even though the Opus decoder is pretty fast, but even still, right? Like it's going to be an overhead, and it probably with a lot of streams on the same JVB, it's probably going to add up, right?
Yes, and there's also, I think you're avoiding a round of re-encoding here.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay, so maybe we will give that a shot and see if that helps.
That would be really exciting if we finally see this.
Yeah. Appreciate all your help. It's really great.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hey guys, this is Gus.
Hi Gus.
I've got a weird issue. I've updated to the video bridge to something that was on HAT at the end of last month, and now I see that my video quality degrades considerably whenever I enable simulcast. Is there anything that could cause that?
Was it? Is this the same issue that you mentioned in the email thread, Gus?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I can't think of anything. If it should, in theory, it should improve things, not degrade things.
And this is Mark. I just wanted to say, since that update, we've seen some degradation in quality as well. I didn't know if it was what was causing that, but I agree with him.
I'm doing weird stuff with video bridge, right? I'm embedding it in other things, so I might not necessarily be using it in a way that you should be using it, but it really is significant. If I enable simulcast, then my resolution drops to something 200 by something. That really is.
Well, that shouldn't happen, definitely. I will continue with the email thread because I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But yeah, that sounds like some weird problem.
I didn't use a proper release or anything. Just what happened to be the latest state of the code at that time. So maybe I just picked the wrong commit to start working on things.
There has been some subsequent updates to that code because we have been finding issues and fixing them as we go. So maybe I don't know if before we start looking into this a bit more closely, maybe it would worth the effort to update to the latest version, to the very latest commit, and check again. And if the problem persists, then we are going to have a closer look, and I'm going to continue the email thread, and we can discuss about it and see what's going on exactly.
Okay, excellent. I'll do that tomorrow. Thanks.
Hey all, this is Josh here from Miami. Got a question with regards, hopefully you guys can hear me now.
Yes.
Awesome. So I've got a question with regards to benchmarking. Has there been any work to benchmark the performance of Jitsi reliability versus some of the other platforms? I saw the one comparison on quality, but just in terms of packet loss and consistency, I'm wondering if there's been any ongoing work to do benchmarking against the other commercial services.
I don't think there's been anything recently, I think is the short answer to your question.
And how have you done it in the past? And if so, is that just a manual process, or did you have some sort of programmatic method for doing it?
We've done some load testing in the past to check like you know, bandwidth and all that. And in the past, we had used to use Jitsi Hammer. More recently, we've been more using, we haven't done anything official or anything big, but often for George or me or Boris, I think have been using like the Selenium grid, a Selenium grid for testing, but nothing automated in terms of gathering measurements or anything like that. We have Datadog. I usually read stats in Datadog and a combination of that and stuff in the logs.
Got it. Thank you. I had one other question, which I was just wondering if was repaired. For some reason, we have one of our members is using a Mac, and they have, for some unexplained reason, microphone unavailable that comes up on their Mac, and we've been trying to pin down exactly what might that have been that makes her Mac different than other Macs in our organization. And I was just wondering.
Does it happen even the first time they used it after rebooting the machine?
We haven't. I'm not sure if we've tried a reboot. I will try that.
So I don't know if anybody knows anything specifically about this, but in general, can't get microphone is usually like there's some app that's being greedy about the mic, and that's already acquired it, and Chrome can't get it. So if you reboot. And it's fine, then it's probably definitely that. If you reboot and it's still a problem, there's even still a chance that maybe something is auto starting and grabbing the mic relay. I don't know if she is or they have anything else installed, but those are the first things I'd try. I'm not aware of any known issue for Mac microphone acquisition, but if anyone else is.
Well, I've actually seen just general problems, not specific to Jitsi, but core audio on a Mac does tend to get stuck in weird states regularly. And what I have done, I've even made this a script in some cases because it was so consistent. Happens in Google Hangouts, happens in a range of different things. It's just PS -EF and then type that to grep core audio, and then you just kill core audio and it will automatically just restart. When that's been the problem, restarting core audio without having to restart your whole machine has, I don't know if it'll work in this case, but it's worth trying, and it's a little faster than restarting a whole machine.
And just that command once again, please. The grep that can you just repeat that once again?
Yeah, I could put it. Oops, sorry.
I just pasted it into the chat. Actually,
awesome.
I have it as a command as in my Bash profile.
Awesome, thank you.
Is Emil still here? Maybe not. Oh, anybody else?
Any other questions from the community? Oh, actually, I have one very quick question. Does JVB ever automatically send MNO an RTCP by on behalf of a user, or is that always sent from a client?
It's sent from the client, and the JVB relays it. So you should be getting buys.
Okay, but it should. But okay, it'll never be sent like on behalf of the user.
I don't think so, but that's all stuff in FMJ, I think, George, and I have no idea if there's a chance that on some timeout or something where a buy not come through that maybe FMJ would generate one. I have no idea.
It also depends on the context that we're talking about. Is it about the recorder? Is it in this context?
Yeah, just
no.
I don't know if it's specifically the recorder, but we just noticed some weird behavior and RTCP by events being received. So I was just curious whether that is well, we can just assume that that's always being sent from the client, or whether the JVB or FMJ might sort of when it connection goes bad, it might explicitly just try to send it on behalf of a user if it thinks like a connection, like a stream has dropped or something like that. But I just always assume that it's explicit. That's all.
In the translator mode, we don't generate buys. We relay them when we receive them from the sending endpoint, and we relay to the receiving endpoints. In the yeah,
I was just gonna say, are you sure FMJ will never generate them? Because the bridge code itself, I don't think actually does anything with buys. It's all FMJ, I thought, but
it might generate them for send streams, but we don't have any.
And we do relay them. I mean, at least for the streams that are being translated or adapted or projected, the buys are being relayed. But if we're talking about the recorder, then FMJ is involved, and I would assume that FMJ does send buys for the send streams, as Boris has already mentioned. I haven't checked though. I'm not sure.
Okay, I actually thought for the recorder we were intercepting buy events and not actually preventing them from getting passed through to FMJ. But I have to look at it to be sure. But I can check. Just curious. But yeah, thanks for that.
okay. If nobody has anything else, I think we'll wrap it up. Thanks, everybody.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
See you next time.
Bye.